Hello and welcome to the Musical Instrument Investigator. In this video we're going to be looking at the top 10 most expensive violins ever sold at auction as of the 1st of April 2024. Last year was a significant year for violin sales and the top 10 list has changed. To see last year's video, please follow the link in the top right hand corner. Please note that this video only covers violins sold via auction and not those sold via private sales. Links to all violins featured in this video can be found in the video description. Before we start looking at the top 10, I'd just like to thank you for watching this video and please consider subscribing, liking, commenting or turning on notifications as it would really help. For the sake of consistency, all final sale prices are listed in US dollars. Where currency conversion has taken place, the dollar value at the time of the sale has been used. All final sale prices include the buyer's premium. Coming in at number 10, we have the Baron von der Leyen Klaveness. This was made by Antonio Stradivari in Cremona in around 1705. It was sold by Treviso Auctions on April the 27th, 2012 for $2,592,000. Notable former owners of this violin include Baron Friedrich Heinrich von der Leyen, Anton Frederick Klaveness, Emil Hermann, Moulsby Kimball and Rembert Wurlitzer Incorporated. It is currently owned by a private individual. Coming in at number 9, we have the Lambert Solomon. This was made by Antonio Stradivari in Cremona in 1729. This was sold by Christie's Auctions on April the 2nd, 2007. It sold for $2,728,000. Notable former owners of this violin include August Reichers, W.E. Hill & Sons, Robert Augustus Bauer, John and Arthur Beer, Ernest E. Winterbotham, Dorothy Mary Murray Lambert and Seymour Solomon. It is currently owned by a private individual. In at number 8 we have the Cabriac. It was made by Antonio Stradivari in Cremona around 1698. This was sold by J&A Beer on October the 28th, 2014 for $2,764,767. Notable former owners of this violin include Dr. Samuel Bonjour, Count de Cabriac, Bernard Goldblatt, Sylvian Bloch, Joseph Vargo and Rolf Habesreutinger. It is currently owned by a private individual. In at 7 we have the Hammer. This was made by Antonio Stradivari in Cremona in 1707. It was sold by Christie's Auctions on May the 16th, 2006 for $3,544,000. Notable former owners of this violin include Christian Hammer, Bernard Sinsheimer, Raymond Pitcairn, Albert H. Wallace and Laddie Junkunk. It is currently owned by a private individual. Coming in at number 6 we have the Molitor. This was made by Antonio Stradivari in Cremona in 1697. This was sold by Treviso Auctions on October the 15th, 2010 for $3,600,000. Notable former owners of this violin include Robert Augustus Bauer, Madame Juliette Recamier, Count Gabriel Jean-Joseph Molitor, J. Mazarin, Curtis Institute in Philadelphia, E. R. Voigt, Muriel Anderson, Elmar Oliveira and Albert Stern. It is currently owned by a private individual. Coming in at number 5 we have the Pasquier. This was made by Bartolomeo Giuseppe Guarneri, also known as del Gesu. It was made in Cremona in around 1737. This violin was sold at Claude de Gout's Auctions on June the 3rd, 2022 for $3,637,892. This violin was formerly owned by Regis Pasquier and is now owned by famous German violinist David Garrett. It was Garrett's lifelong dream to buy a del Gesu violin and he finally managed to achieve this by buying the Pasquier. He had to sell his New York apartment to be able to afford it, but it was his dream come true. Interestingly, during the sale, the violin is reported as being from 1737. Subsequently, it was then listed as 1736. Now currently, on the Guarneri del Gesu website, which is run by David Garrett, the year is given as 1734. Shortly after acquiring the Pasquier violin, David Garrett formed the Del Gesu Club, which brings together owners of Del Gesu violins from all across the world. Information pertaining to the Del Gesu Club and the work of Guarneri del Gesu in general can be found on David Garrett's website. You can find a link to this in the video description. Coming in at number 4 and a new entry to the top 10 list is the Empress Catarina. This was made by Antonio Stradivari in Cremona in 1708. This was sold by Teresa Auctions on June the 9th, 2023 for $5,900,000. Notable former owners of this violin include Empress Catarina of Russia, Adrian Mosevich Grabowski, Ernest Andrei Salzar, Count Dewar, Victor Mikhailovich Freloff, Nicholas Friedrich Kracht, Mrs. Arthur Kendall Stothert, Henri Belleville, Prosper Morrill, Professor Leo Guetta, Peggy Guetta Finzi, Dr. Jacob Gerson Cohen, Dr. Herbert R. Axelrod. It is currently owned by a private individual. Coming in at number 3 in a new entry to the top 10 is the Baltic. This was made by Bartolomeo Giuseppe Guarneri, also known as Del Gesu, in Cremona in 1731. This was sold by Teresa Auctions on March the 17th, 2023 for $9,440,000. Notable former owners of this violin include the Gies family, Walter Sochevsky, E. Clem Wilson, Dorothy Powers Percival, Irving Levick, George A. Gade, Stephen Stark, and Salwing Lamb. It is currently owned by a private individual. Coming in at number 2, we have the Da Vinci Ex-Seidel. This was made by Antonio Stradivari in Cremona in around 1714. This was sold by Teresa Auctions on June the 10th, 2022 for $15,340,000. Notable former owners of this violin include Arthur Fouquet de Emenville, Vicomte Frederick de Janza, Antoine Jacques Forchy, Charles Tunch, Tosha Seidel, Muriel Rubin, and the Munesugu collection in Tokyo. It is currently owned by a private individual. This violin was used by Tosha Seidel to record Over the Rainbow for the 1939 musical Wizard of Oz. This violin was very close to breaking the auction record for the most expensive violin ever sold at auction, but just missed out by a tiny margin. Before we look at which violin is in the number 1 spot, let's have a quick look at the violins which have now dropped off the top 10. Formerly in the number 10 spot was the Folinari. This was made by Bartolomeo Giuseppe Guarneri, also known as Del Gesu, in Cremona between 1715 and 1722. This was sold by Teresa Auctions on June the 25th, 2012 for $2,333,175. This violin is currently owned by a private individual. Formerly in the number 9 spot was the Croall McEwen. This was made by Antonio Stradivari in Cremona in 1684. This was sold by Ingalls and Hayday on March the 28th, 2017 for $2,410,310. It is currently owned by a private individual. Finally, and coming in at number 1 and still the most expensive violin ever sold at auction, is the Lady Blunt. Now this was made by Antonio Stradivari in Cremona in 1721. This was sold by Teresa Auctions on June the 22nd, 2011 for a staggering $15,821,285. Absolutely incredible amount of money. The Lady Blunt, alongside the Messiah violin, is considered to be one of the finest surviving examples of a violin by Antonio Stradivari. It survives in a near-perfect original condition, which is extremely rare for a Stradivari instrument. This violin retains its original neck, although it's been re-angled at the heel. The original bass bar and fingerboard are still in existence, although not currently fitted to the instrument. The ornamented pegs and tailpiece were made by Jean-Baptiste Vuillaume. Notable previous owners of the Lady Blunt include Jean-Baptiste Vuillaume, Lady Anne Blunt, Charles Withers and Emil Hammer, Charles F. Edler, Baron Johann Knoop, Johann Kruse, J. E. Street, Richard Bennett, W. E. Hill & Sons, Robert Augustus Bauer, Henry Wero, Sam Bloomfield, Robin Lowe, and the Nippon Music Foundation. It is currently owned by a private individual. Once again, thanks a lot for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, or turning on notifications.